Darksiders 2 is an old game at this, however, it holds up in modern day. You see, very much like the first game, the gameplay can be represented towards its character. Whereas in the first game you were very slow, you were very direct as a character. Here you are very direct as a character, but you're much faster, you're more sassy, and so on. It's pretty fun. There's also a big change in the way that the world is structured. In the first game, it was an instance world that you'll be exploring in instances. However, in the second game, in Darksiders 2, you have a big open world almost, with open dungeons that you can go in and explore. There's also a new loot system that is really quite ahead of its time and really fun. And the combat, like I said, is much faster, but there's also a lot more abilities to try out and play around with. And you can really make your own build in Darksiders 2. And along with that, there's multiple different weapons to use, not just as your spammy weapon, not just the main weapon. However, there's also the secondary weapons, which include everywhere from a shield, gauntlet-ish type of thing, to claws, hammers, great swords, and everything in between. It's really fucking cool. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and those weapons have their own unique moves. Your main weapons are dual scythes, which both are very fast to use and they're very flashy and very cool, and I absolutely adore. The story itself is also pretty cool. It focuses on trying to prove that the events of the first game weren't the fault of the main character of the first game, which is your brother. It's called War, just like you're playing as Death now. It is again very heavily focused on religion, which I think is pretty cool. Both having the tree of life from Nordic mythology, but also having things like angels and demons and all of these other things all sort of colliding. It's a really cool game and one that's very well worth experiencing, especially in the modern era, as it harpens back to a time where things were simpler, and yet it does manage to feel completely modern. The only thing that really is to note in terms of things that you might want to look out for is the technical issues with the game, as you will have to fuck around with the settings to get this bad boy to run. It just doesn't run, at least on my Windows 11 PC. I couldn't get it to run, it kept crashing, it kept being faults with it. I had to change the graphical settings quite a bit to make it work for me. It was things like changing it to window mode and adding on VSync that really seemed to sort of save me from some of the crashes, and even then there still were problems. However, it became playable. Overall, I do recommend it, and if you want to see my full thoughts, I suggest that you go and watch my full video on Darksiders 2.